We are just in the left ear, we're near the entrance, and I've managed to extract a large plug of wax with some keratin that's coating it. And you can see those motions. I'm going up and down with the suction probe, and that helps to detach the keratin, dead skin, that's also attached to the ear canal. And by just manipulating the suction probe, you can see we just, again, once more, mobilizing this plug of wax, removing the keratin, detaching it from the canal wall, which then enables us to remove the wax. So this is the patient's second bend on the ear canal to the left. That's their second bend, and it's quite a sharp corner to the left beyond this. It's almost like a chicane. And as I said, you'll get more of an appreciation in a moment when we look at the entrance of the ear. The eardrum is nowhere in sight, it's just veered to the left. And again, so you've got this plug of wax which is hidden behind the patient's prominent second bend. The great thing about an endoscope is once you're comfortable with the technique, it doesn't matter how narrow or twisty the ear canal is, you can manipulate it with the endoscope to straighten the ear canal, which enables any endoscopic specialist to remove wax from anyone's ears, really. So that last plug that was really deep and medial against the eardrum, we just brought that forward. The patient had been using drops. They probably OTT'd the drops. It's made the wax really wet and sticky, and it's, as such, you get this residue that coats the canal as you remove. So the procedure's complete. The eardrum's nice and healthy, got a good light reflex. You can see here, the endoscope's angling inwards, but you can't see the eardrum. It's not in view. All we can see is the back part of the ear canal. And it's where that second, you can see the ear canal also inclines, it goes upwards. Most people's do, they go up by about 30 degrees, but I would say this patient does a bit more than the norm. And there's a really sharp twist and bend to the left. And so the eardrum's tucked away behind that. So we all kind of do have an S-bend. We have a first bend of the ear canal about 0.5 centimetre in, and the second bend is a further 0.5 centimetre up to 1.5 centimetres into the ear. And that S-bend helps to protect the eardrum. So if you have any foreign object that enters the ear, like a twig, for example, it's not going to go straight towards your eardrum and pierce it. It's going to have to mitigate the bends, and hopefully it can't mitigate the bends. So there is an evolutionary reason why we do have twisty ears. So we're just onto the patient's right ear now. This wax is a bit drier and crispier at the entrance. There's a bit more skin involved. We know that because skin can be quite glossy. We get a reflection of the light source that we're using to illuminate the ear. You can see it's a bit glossy here. So most earwax, 60% of earwax, is actually composed of dead skin, believe it or not, and the remaining 40 is a combination of sebum, so that's secreted by the sebaceous gland. It's an oily, fatty secretion, same substance that our hair strands on our scalp secrete, so it's the same oil. And then some of us also have an oily sweat, and it's the same sweat as under our armpits. Now, not everyone has that, it depends on your genetics. There's a mutation to the ABCC11 gene, and typically people from an African descent or European descent have this wet gene, which means that they also have body odour, and that oily sweat makes wax quite wet. And in the absence of that gene, so a lot of people from the Far East or the North Americas don't have that particular gene, so they don't also have body odour. Their wax is quite dry, so you don't have that oily sweat. And also with that oily sweat, once that sweat evaporates, it does. It's a bit of an acidic smell, so it does give off a smell. It's a different sweat to the sweat that we have on our brow. Our sweat on our brow is more of a watery, salty sweat, whereas this one is more of an oily, fatty sweat under our armpits, so it's slightly different. So yeah, in this patient, I would say they've got a higher composition of dead skin, probably about 70%. So that's the patient's eardrum. So this ear wasn't as bendy, but it was quite narrow. So whereas the patient's left ear was narrow and bendy, this one, there was a slight bend, but not, as I said, we all do have that, but it wasn't as prominent as the patient's left ear. So you can see there's some keratin here that I'm just suctioning off the back canal wall. I'm just mopping up near the entrance, and you'll see the patient's eardrum.